Welcome back, troglodytes, to your daily dose of guitar information, the Trogly's Guitar Show. You guys remember this episode? I bought a whole bunch of guitars from that hunting episode that night, but this is the first one to have shown up. And it was one of those guitars that was on auction or best offer. And those things are always confusing to me because I never know. Are they expecting you to bid more than their current asking? Or are they expecting you to bid less? Because I've had success both ways. So this is one of those ones I decided to go higher than the asking bid. And then about a day later, he counters me. And then I decide, no, I really don't want to pay more than I offered you. So I recountered him. And then I decided, okay, I'm just going to play the bidding game on this one because I don't think there's going to be a lot of interest. Because this is one of those guitars you kind of have to educate people on for them to fully appreciate. But let's go ahead and see what is inside this beautiful Gibson Custom Art Historic Custom Shop case. I only had one person to compete against, and they almost won at the end. But I only won because I did the bid previous, and we had a matching bid at the end. So let's see, what is my bounty? A Les Paul Jr. that says Nascar Cafe on it. Who wouldn't want this? Okay, so we've got quite the interesting guitar here to talk about with some interesting specs. So NASCAR is not my area of expertise or something I'm highly interested in, so feel free to fill us in the comment section below, but here's what I researched online. Darrell, he looks like this. He raced in the Winston Cup series from 1972 until the year 2000. He's most notable for driving the Chevy of Hendrick Motorsports number 17, and he was a champion in the years 81, 82, 85, and he's won a whole bunch of other awards. Since his career there, he became a motorsports analyst, an author, and a national TV broadcaster, so kind of a big deal within the NASCAR world. And I enjoyed listening to some of his stories on YouTube, like this one by the Garage Shop's YouTube channel. But anyways, this anniversary logo was used to commemorate his 25th anniversary of racing full-time. Is the best information that I could find, because his first race, as I was telling you earlier, was 1972, but 1976 appears to be his first full season race, perhaps? So that means his silver anniversary was done up in 1997. So even though this Gibson, we can't really date it by looking at its serial number, we can use that knowledge to know that this thing was built around 1997. What part of the year? I would guess the late part of the year because we have a block inlay here that says November 11th, 1997. It's kind of hard to see it on the truss rod cover, but it also reads 25 anniversary. There's no 25th, but it's silver because silver anniversary. So you can find toy cars with the same logos and a few other memorabilia pieces. But NASCAR and Gibson have always gone like hand in hand, at least in the 90s, to do like limited edition, you know, you're the winner of the race, you get this guitar, and then the guy smashes it and makes Sam Bass very sad type stuff. So in the late 90s, early 2000s, there were tons of promotional guitars like this that Gibson would do for even other companies outside of NASCAR, like check out the Donzi Les Paul. There's even Playboy guitars, Fruit of the Loom underwear stuff. There's a lot of them. We can't cover them all in this episode, but you're welcome to check them out on my channel. But this one has not only one marketing gimmick to it, but two marketing gimmicks. The Nashville NASCAR Cafe. So apparently, the story behind this is this hung in the Nashville NASCAR Cafe, which looks like this. Prior to owning this guitar, I knew nothing about it. Apparently, this was a failed business that only lasted 3 years. They started around 1997 and they closed New Year's Eve the year 2000. Now, there were other locations of the NASCAR Cafe, but generally they all fell to the same fate. They did well when they first opened, but then people started to get bored because none of the memorabilia changed, so they would close after a few years. I'm guessing this right here very well might have something to do with the opening date of the cafe. So if November 11th, 1997 means anything to anybody, please let me know. If you watch the hunting episode, you probably already know, but this is a legitimate Gibson Custom Shop Les Paul Jr. It just has some marketing stuff to it. So generally, a super really cool limited edition guitar that has a unique factor to it would go up in value as compared to a normal one. But generally, the market does not like these style of advertisement guitars. Like if you find the very right guy who's a Waltrip worshipper and they just happened to go to the NASCAR Cafe when it opened when they were a little wee lad and they have fond memories of it, then maybe you could find somebody that would pay a premium. But the general guidelines are these things sell for less than a regular custom shop, so you can pick these up for some pretty screaming deals. Like how much is a regular Gibson Custom Shop Les Paul Jr. worth? Brand new, they're this much. On the used market, generally between like 18 to 25, sometimes a little bit more. Just depends how new it is and how much wear and tear it's got. So this guy, it's got the same P90 wrap tail piece. Everything else is there. Custom shop decal on the back, special serial number that's ink stamped. Except for we don't have a pick guard on it, but the right guy could take this, refinish it, and just have themselves a really cool late 90s custom shop Les Paul Jr. As look, we even have shelf construction, so it's not just like a USA one that they took to the custom shop to put these decals on. On top of that, you've got a real custom shop case. This case is worth like $350. But do we have any fancy case candy on this thing? No. As far as promotional guitars go, it's fairly tasteful. All you really have to do if you hate this stuff is reshoot the top black. Getting rid of the inlay would be a bit difficult, but it does give you a clean slate that you could just completely convert everything into a block inlay. Because you can just rip that one out, put a normal one in. I mean, that's not what juniors normally have, but generally the 12th fret inlays, they give you issues because they'll always be exposed somewhere. So this could actually be a cool, fun project for somebody. I'm not personally going to do any of that. We're just going to enjoy it and appreciate it for what it is today. Let's go ahead and throw it on the workbench to take an individual look at its parts and specs. Put it on the workbench, realized I ran out of steel wool. This is a Nascar guitar. I thought I would try some new cleaning products that are traditionally meant for cars to see if that could bring this back up to its once former glory. So I've heard good things about Meguiar's before, even being used on guitars. I don't think this is exactly what was recommended to me. I'll have to look in my messages to find what that was. So I used a scratch remover, and I mean, look at this. All those, like, pretty heavy picking scratches just disappeared on this thing. So I tried to use it on some of the other like polishing swirls and whatnot, and there's still some on here. It's by no means a perfect job, but this thing just looks so clean. It could definitely be displayed again. However, it just ended up making these little nicks and dings a little bit more apparent than they once were. So, you know, be careful what you're exposing on a guitar, right? But man, that is looking good. Then after the scratch remover, I used some Virtuoso polish, and then I decided to try some metal polish cream. Figured, hey, why not? It could make the bridge look nice. I mean, before and after, I mean, this is looking pretty good. Same thing was true for the tuners. There was some pitting. It's still kinda there, but at least the tuners look in a lot better shape now. So only time will tell if the finish starts flaking off tomorrow, but it looks good for now. And I'm starting to fall for this little thing. You know, I always love the underdog guitars. I mean, take a look at my channel. I've got a video called I Bought the Guitars Nobody Wanted. And that's what kind of led me to fall in love with some of the 70s models of Gibson anyways, like the Marauder and S1. I like the guitars that people don't traditionally like. So if you're upset that I tell you these signature memorabilia guitars are generally not worth as much, that doesn't mean they're not as fun. I actually like these things because each and every single one of them has their own little quirk, and there's very few of them for each one. It's always fun discovering a new one, and this is one I definitely had not seen before. So let's learn a little bit about this. It's just a regular Les Paul Jr. I know I called it a 57 earlier, but I don't think there's actually a particular year they were reissuing this time, because the neck is actually pretty thin, which is not what you generally expect on a Junior. But something to know about these promotional guitars is a lot of them just use like a vinyl decal or something like that underneath the finish. You cannot actually peel this off by any means. It's underneath the clear coat. But a lot of them, as the finish moves underneath it, they'll get a crack in it. And this one, you can see a crack right here that you can feel, and then down here. So that's just the decal being slightly cracked apart because the woods are moving ever so slightly. So if you ever see that on any of these promotional style guitars, you know, that's just par for the course. It looks like this particular one, I mean, it might have a small one right here. That's more just a scratch. I don't see any actual cracks on that one. But you can see the mahogany wood grain underneath here, so lacquer sinking has occurred, which is kind of cool to see, really. Let's check out our pickup here. It's a regular dog ear P90 in the bridge pickup position, not the neck only like in this episode. It's just your standard Gibson style one of the era, no particular markings on it. I think these usually read around 8K ohms. Yep, 8.02. And as far as the cavity, I was hoping we'd find something special in here. However, that does not appear to be the case. And then it just has your traditional wrap tail piece on it. So you can see where these strings have left some marks on here, but at least it's nice and clean now. Even polished up the back. So condition-wise, this thing's looking pretty nice now, right? You got a couple of scratches.
There's a couple of deeper dings down here. That's not just like a light blemish that could be wiped away. That's definitely in the clear coat, at least. As far as the things you might want to show off on this guitar, or maybe not, they're clean for the most part, besides, once again, those dings that we are looking at on this side. So I'm not really sure the story of this. Like, did guests get to play it? Is that how it got so scratched up? Or did somebody just use this as a punk rock monster? I mean, that's what's beautiful about these things. They're generally a little bit less expensive. So somebody who normally couldn't afford a custom shop guitar can occasionally get lucky and get one of these if they're buying it from a private seller. As far as these, master volume, master tone. Why are the knobs off? I'll be honest, it's because they just came off. They're not really the most secure fitting, but they kind of stay on just to be used like normal, but maybe I could widen the shaft out to secure that fit a bit more. Well, that seemed to help, but it's still not 100% perfect. I don't know, guys. I don't really like Les Paul Juniors without pick guards on them. That just doesn't quite capture the same vibe. I'm always so used to that. Now, of course, you could install one. You'd just be kind of covering him up a little bit. But anyways, moving on from our mahogany body, you've got a mahogany neck with an absolutely beautiful rosewood fretboard hiding on this thing. I wasn't thinking too much of the fretboard when I unboxed it, but once I cleaned and conditioned it, you've got all that beautiful streaking in here. Pretty much next to no wear. I mean, you've got some divots in the fretboard here, but that just looks like it's within the wood grain or standard QC issues of the era. I mean, the strings were so rusty on this thing, it wouldn't surprise me if whoever bought this from the Nascar Cafe just ended up displaying it and not actually playing it, because those very well could have been the original strings. They were so bad and these frets needed some help. But I love the way that these acrylic inlays have aged. I mean, that one has a very yellow hue to it. The other one's not quite as much, but still there. But this is definitely blinding white. And if you want to know why, it's kind of like what we were talking on that KM Les Paul episode a week or so ago. This is a real mother of pearl inlay, whereas everything else is a paralloid plastic. Looks like your standard 22 medium jumbo style frets. Typical 24 3/4 inch scale length, 12 inch radius, 1.68 inch nut width, 2.04 by the 12. First fret neck depth might shock you, 0.82 and 0.91 for a junior. I mean, geez. This is a custom shop junior, but it's definitely not trying to reissue a vintage junior's neck. So hey, there you go. Another reason you might want to buy these. You've always loved a custom shop junior, but you hated the big baseball bat neck and didn't want to custom order your own with a smaller neck, so you check one of these bad boys out. Here's what that neck profile looks like at the first fret and the 12th fret. Definitely just a C shape. Now we move on to the face of the headstock. I also gave this the whole scratch remover treatment just because there's a whole bunch of gunk on here. And it kind of opened my eyes to something else. I don't think Les Paul Juniors get a face veneer because you can actually see through to the mahogany wood grain on this one as well, which was interesting. So they just must spray those black and then put the decals on to save money, which I've definitely heard of before. It's just never something that registered because it just looks like all the other ones. But our truss rod's looking good on this one, tons of life left, but now get ready for the big reveal. Look at how much better this truss rod cover looks now. You can actually read what it says, 25th anniversary. So I just used that metal polishing compound on that as well, and that came way back to life. They didn't really stamp it super deep though, it's not really meant to stand out. But once installed, I mean, you can definitely read that in most angles now, unlike before. Now with the paint cracking right here, some guys might be like, oh no, is the neck shifting? It is a slight shift between like the neck tenon and the body, like just ever so slightly that caused this. Because if we get it in the light just right, you can actually see the outline of the long neck tenon construction. And it's like right around that area, so it wouldn't surprise me if that's what ended up making that crack form. But that's kind of cool that the finish has sunken down so much that you can just barely make out the tenon, because people are always like, how do you know a junior has a long neck tenon if you can't actually look inside the neck pickup? Some of them, I guess you can. Moving on to the backside, the scratch remover did pretty good. I didn't bother doing the follow-up polish job, but down here there was actually one of those coily cable things, like where it gets rested on one and it kind of impresses the finish. I was impressed that that was able to get rid of that. I mean, you can still kind of see it right here. Which reminds me, on the front of the guitar, if you look at it at an angle just right, there's like a long impression on the front. I think that was just in the wood. It doesn't always catch your attention, but it is there. But somebody definitely played this because they had a strap on here that really kind of chewed up the finish down here. There's definitely some areas worn through to the bare mahogany. So it's got some wear scattered across here. It's kind of hard to see because it's a black finish that's like a mirror now. But we do have our original Gibson pots in here, and if you were confused about the date and wanted more verification, there you go. 137 stands for CTS pots, 97 stands for 1997. Unfortunately, I can't see the week of production because it's covered over by this wire. The control plate even still has the protective plastic over top of it. Not that this guitar is really in the condition that merits keeping it on there, it's just kind of cool. But you've got your regular output jack on the side. Moving up the neck, I did do the polish job after the scratch remover. You can see there's some light impressions on the neck and a little bit heavier right here. That's not a break. That looks to me like somebody had a ring or something that was just dinging up against the finish. But of course we will blacklight it because I'm very curious. I've always been scared to use a slightly cutting polish because I once had a dealer use an excuse for somebody in a private help session that the reason a guitar did not blacklight is because it was just recently buffed. So ever since that day, it's like, I don't know if that's 100% true, but you know, when you buff it, you're really cutting down the finish a bit. So I guess technically, in theory, that could cause the guitar not to blacklight. So that's why I wanted to test it on a Gibson, something that actually uses the right nitro finish. If this guitar, the finish falls off, I'm sure somebody won't be sad. They'll gladly adopt it as a project and refinish it whatever way they want. So I think that's our next step here in a minute to do the blacklight test. Right after we look at the headstock. Gibson Custom Shop decal. You gotta remember, the Custom Shop was very new at this time. They opened in late 1993, so this being a 97, they were just trying to figure out what on earth should we do with this new place outside of reissues. But there you can see our serial number DW002. And there's a big old ding up there. But that means there are at least 2 of these things in existence. It wouldn't surprise me if the cafe owner got one, and he used it as a business write-off, and then he displayed number 2, or maybe he displayed both of them. I'm really not sure. But the DW, obviously, this guy's initials. Here we go. Moment of truth. Nah, I don't think that affected the finish at all. Now, maybe a more crazy buffing job where they actually use a polishing wheel and stuff. I mean, I guess you could kind of see it right there. So honestly, I don't know if I would suggest using this stuff on guitars or not, but this blacklight test really shows you the true size of those decals. You can definitely see where the decal ends and the body's finish begins. Yeah, right there, you can kind of see it kind of cut away some of the clear coat. I don't think I would use that on my really nice vintage stuff, but hey, it was a fun $30 experiment on this thing. I always find I bond with guitars when I do like a deep clean or do something new with them. So it's a good learning experience for all of us, but that headstock is looking good here. Moving on to the backside. Well, that looks more so to me like the strap might have reacted to it, because I mean, we definitely have evidence of at least that coily cable being laid on it, so who knows, maybe the strap could have been left on. There you can kind of see some of those scratches associated with that. I mean, I didn't really buff that area too much. I mean, I just did all this by hand. Let's take a look around here. You can see some sort of a ding. I did not actually clean the side, so I guess this will be the true test. I just briefly wiped them down. So yeah, that looks good. Onwards to the back side of the neck. Once again, you can see those light impressions I was talking about and that finish area missing right here and right there. No, they're not headstock breaks, cracks, or repairs. So you can see Gibson's normal decals, they don't do that weird outline thing. So that's just kind of cheap stuff that they were probably making. Now that the blacklight's pointed it out, if you know it's there, you can see it's just a slightly more yellowish hint of a color on it. You see that outline right there? That is not all that apparent unless you know it's there and you're really looking for it and you get it at the angle just right. Like right there, you can see it again. Like if I wouldn't have seen the under blacklight, I would have never even noticed that. But there we go. Only thing left to capture now is the weight, which is fairly reasonable at 8 pounds, 2.1 ounces. All right, let's go ahead and plug this thing in and hear how it sounds. I mean, this is just a whole different guitar than what was shown in those photos and what I first unboxed. It's looking nice. All right, let's go ahead and give it a tone sample. Only one pickup. I'll try to play with the volume and tone a little bit too, just to give you an idea. Now we'll play with rolling the volume down. So full on, it's really kind of bright and spanky. But this volume pot, as you roll it down, you really only have anything between like 7 and 10. After that, it's just like almost off. So once again, 10, 9, 8, 7. That was pretty well gone by 4. So when Gibson changed the pots in like 2019, this is kind of what they were talking about. We can also play around with your tone. So that was all at 10. I'll just roll it down as we go. I really like that. Just about halfway down, you almost get to that neck position. Of course, where you pick on a junior really depends on your tones as well. So right by the bridge. That's true on all guitars, though, just especially true on juniors since you only have one pickup to work with. Okay, let's go ahead and give it some distortion. Now that we know all about this particular 25th anniversary Les Paul Jr., what are my final thoughts on this thing? I've pretty much been telling you that throughout the entire episode. It's kind of an interesting, unique, limited edition that will only speak to very few people. But even if you don't necessarily care about the NASCAR Cafe or his personal 25th anniversary, a Junior will speak to anybody that likes custom shop high-quality instruments. Even though Junior started as student models, there's a lot of guys that love the vintage ones. So if
If somebody can't afford a true vintage one because they're getting expensive lately, that's when you seek out a custom shop one. Now, this is far from the most accurate of a reissue, but it was made within the Gibson custom shop, so it's got that going for it. The nice thin neck. I did a little bit of setup work on this one, adjusted the truss rod. It's actually quite a nice player. It definitely needed an adjustment though, because as I said, this was mainly a display piece before I got it, but man, doesn't that just look great? Shines like a mirror now. So if you're interested in this one, I'll throw it up on my website. You can buy it there. It'll definitely be cheaper than most used custom shop juniors out there. But, you know, there's a trade-off for that. All right, troglodytes, I hope you enjoyed checking this one out. I do have a very, 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 very cool promotional guitar coming to a review and demo near you soon, but that might be a couple of more weeks, because I'll try to space similar episodes apart. All right, thanks for tuning in today. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we will catch you tomorrow on the next episode. Take care.